Barda, you are the only trap I could never escape from.
Oh, Scott.
With you, Clark.
I love your brilliance.
I love your kindness.
I love...
Comic books have always had iconic power couples, and fans have grown to love them over the years. They have lent a human touch to these beloved characters so that the average fan can resonate with them. The way that romance is an integral part of movies, TV shows, and novels, comic books are no exception to the rule. We love seeing our favorite superheroes and heroines have a life beyond fighting crime or dealing with universe-ending threats. In 1987, however, John Byrne's Superman and Barda Action Comics issues 532 and 534 would subvert this in the strangest ways that would shock everyone. Over the years, even though some comic books have dealt with mature themes, for the most part, they have always catered to a younger audience. Superman has always been portrayed as the ideal Boy Scout, a shining beacon of hope, truth, and justice, and forever in love with his wife, Lois Lane. Seeing him put in a scenario where he is making questionable video with Big Barda, who is in a relationship with Mr. Miracle, made many heads spin, wondering how this comic book even got released. In this video, we shall tell you how the Man of Steel and Barda almost did the deed on camera. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
This nice, quiet, boring little life, it's all mine.
Barda and Mr. Miracle, a romance for the ages. If Superman and Lois Lane are the most famous comic book couple, then Scott Free and Big Barda are the couple that everyone considers their goal. Created by Jack Kirby as a part of his New Gods, they both debuted in Mr. Miracle issue number 1 and Mr. Miracle issue number 4, 1971. Raised in the orphanage of Granny Goodness and trained from birth to be raised as soldiers for Darkseid, theirs is a beautiful story of discovery, acceptance, redemption, and love. Scott Free was the adopted son of Darkseid, who had been sent to him as a peace offering to maintain the status quo between the New Gods of Apocalypse and New Genesis. He would later join the ranks of Hyman, another new god who sought to start a rebellion on the hellish planet. During one of their many raids, he would meet his future wife, the leader of the Elite Furies, Big Barda, who had been sent out to stamp out the rebel cells. The two eventually fell in love, and Barda joined the rebels' ranks. They ultimately escaped to Earth. There, they would marry and try to live an everyday life as a loving suburban family, with occasional adventuring thrown in. The relationship between them has often been portrayed as loving, supportive, and full of positivity, with both of them being willing to go above and beyond for each other. It is often speculated that Jack Kirby based the dynamics of these two on his relationship with his wife, with the character of Barda being based on his spouse. Their chemistry is second to none, and the readers have been cheering this couple on ever since their inception. The beginning of a misadventure. The story begins with Barda stumbling into one of the metropolis's shadiest locations, where unsavory characters are approaching her. As she is still adjusting to her life on Earth, Barda is unfamiliar with the way of life on her new home planet. She has her purse snatched, and a chase ensues through the dingy alleyways, where the thief makes futile attempts to escape Barda. In a desperate attempt, he climbs down the sewers, hoping that it will provide him refuge. Instead, a creepy tentacle dangles down from the ceiling and snatches him. We find out the creature belongs to a strange, short goblin-like humanoid that dwells in the sewers. Upon inspecting the thief's belongings, this being instantly recognizes the Mega Rod, which was in the purse, and grins as he speaks of his hour of revenge being on hand. At the same time, we notice that Barda has made her way into the sewers in pursuit of the thief. Blasts from her Mega Rod, however, greet her. Whoever it is that was operating it seems to be clearly familiar with the workings of this alien technology. She is confused at how a lowly thief could have figured out how to use her Mega Rod. As she dons her armor, preparing for battle, she is briefly distracted by the figure of the thief dangling from the ceiling of the sewer. To her surprise, she finds out that the Mega Rod is being wielded by another creature, and before she can recover from her shock, she is hit by a blast from the weapon that renders her unconscious. How Superman gets involved. The scene shifts to Superman as Clark Kent, who is in a hospital located in the suicide slum of Metropolis. He is investigating an unusual case of elderly patients who are alive well beyond their natural years, considering what their living conditions should have allowed. Upon closer investigation with his X-ray vision, he notices their cells have all been affected by a specific type of radiation he is unfamiliar with. With a desire to get to the bottom of the matter, Superman flies off to investigate the neighborhood. He is flying over the area, scanning it, while musing over the tragedy of the humans that call this part of the city home, when he suddenly sensed the same radiation he found in those patients, emanating from a particular area. Sleaze's sleazy motivation. In the next scene, we see a shocking sight of Big Barda, who is now scantily clad, dancing, as she's encouraged by our antagonist, whose name is revealed to be Sleaze. pun not intended. It is quite evident that she is being forced to do so against her will, and it is a pretty uncomfortable thing to witness. He reveals his big motivation to Barda for getting revenge on Darkseid and Apocalypse. According to him, in the early days of Darkseid, he was his aide and counselor. The duo had thrived in each other's company. However, as Darkseid grew in power, he grew tired of petty cruelty as his mind was set towards bigger goals. He then banished Sleaze from the planet, using his Omega beams to Earth. Darkseid, according to Sleaze, deemed him to be too disgusting, even for Apocalypse. Ever since his banishment, he has been nursing his wounded ego and looking for an opportunity to exact revenge on his former master and planet. This opportunity was provided to him when he accidentally came to find the Mega Rod and capture Barda. Barda vs Superman, a clash made in heaven. His gloating is cut short prematurely when Superman turns up and smacks Sleaze across the room, which breaks his control over Barda, who swiftly activates her armor and prepares to take on the creep. As she begins blasting our villain with energy blasts, Superman grabs her arm to prevent her from killing him. He tries to tell Barda that he needs the little fiend alive to question him. Barda, however, having grown agitated and suspicious, quickly judges that Superman too was under Sleaze's power, saying his rescue was timed a bit too conveniently. She starts blasting the Man of Steel with energy blasts, who is unable to put up much resistance and gets pulverized by Barda's fury. In the midst of this chaos, as Barda stands over the unconscious Superman, Sleaze once again manages to snatch the Mega Rod from her hand. He activates a trap door beneath her feet and sends both the Man of Steel and Barda hurtling down into the darkness as he cackles triumphantly. An unlikely ally. We pick back up in the next issue with Mr. Miracle, or Scott Free, and Oberon, his assistant, as he opens the door and calls happily for his wife. The sight that greets him shocks both him and his assistant. On the sofa in front of the television, sipping wine, he is greeted by none other than Darkseid himself, who informs him that his wife isn't home. As Scott lunges towards the ruler of Apocalypse, seeking answers, Darkseid tells him that he didn't have any direct hand in her disappearance. He hands a videotape to Scott, telling him that it will answer at least some of his questions. The duo is wary of the videotape, as Oberon states it could be a mind trapper, but what they witness on the tape is far worse. We are not shown what exactly was on the tape, but it is heavily implied that the tape contained explicit footage of Barda. Darkseid then tells Scott about where his agents discovered the tape, in Mobbs Lane on the outskirts of the suicide slum. Let's not make a movie. We are greeted by the arrival of Sleaze and Superman in an untidy office occupied by a middle-aged man. The man, aptly named Grossman, happily tells Sleaze, whom he addresses as Mr. Smith, that he has already made a killing with the footage of Barda that he sent him. Initially frightened by the sight of Superman, Grossman then thinks he is a fake. Sleaze makes the Man of Steel snap the man's desk in half to prove that he is the real deal, and then offers Superman as the lead in his upcoming film, revealing Barda as his co-star. Grossman's eyes light up as he greedily exclaims about all the money he would make with these two starring in his movie. We find out from Sleaze that he is partnering with Grossman to make money from these films to raise an army and enact his vengeance. A trip down memory lane with Mr. Miracle. In the meantime, Mr. Miracle has been flying on his way to Suicide Slum in search of his wife. Along the way, through his musings, we get a background on his character and how he was raised as a child by Granny Goodness in her infamous orphanage. There, he had been trained with the other children to be Darkseid's shock troopers, robbed of all individuality, mere tools to serve. He had been rescued by Hyman, who mentored him and taught him all he knew about escaping and using the mother boxes, which were living computers. He recalled how he had met his wife, who had unexpectedly later helped him escape from Apocalypse together. Once on Earth, he recalls meeting Thaddeus Brown, the original Mr. Miracle, and his assistant, Oberon, who gets murdered by a criminal named Steelhand. He remembers donning the mantle of Mr. Miracle after the passing of Thaddeus Brown and his life since then. As he recalls getting married to Barda and is lost in his thoughts about Darkseid's motivation for helping him, the mother box warns him of impending danger just as he gets jumped from behind by thugs. He is seemingly knocked unconscious, put in a sack, tied with chains, and then thrown in a garbage box, which is welded shut and dumped into the sea. He wouldn't be called the universe's greatest escape artist if such a simple trap were his undoing, and we discover Mr. Miracle, true to his name, not only escapes, but is back on the trail of his wife. The final showdown, and the moment we are here for. As this happens, Grossman, along with Sleaze, who is posing as Smith, have been trying their best to make Barda and Superman do the deed on camera. However, they seem to be facing resistance, as Superman's sense of morality is preventing him from committing the act. Here, we get the revelation that Sleaze's ability is not mere mind control. Instead, he feeds on the emotions of others and can compel them to act on their base instincts and dark desires. Just as he is about to break down Superman and Barda's resistance and they begin kissing, Mr. Miracle arrives on the scene, crashing through the roof window and wrapping up the the film. He then proceeds to explain how he made his escape from Sleaze's death trap and found his hideout, having been discovered and his plans laid to waste. Sleaze makes a dash for an unceremonious exit. Mr. Miracle is about to give chase when he is attacked by the octopus-like pet of Sleaze, which distracts him enough to allow the creepy villain to make his escape. Barda recognizes the creature as an ash crawler from Apocalypse and makes quick work of it. Superman, having broken free from Sleaze's control, has already begun pursuing the villain. His chase is slowed down as his X-ray vision is impaired due to the lead-lined pipes in the sewer. He then resorts to super hearing instead and tracks down Sleaze, who, upon being cornered and knowing there is truly no way out for him, ignites the gas lines with a match, taunting Superman to the very end as he seemingly ends his life ironically beneath the suicide slum in a fiery explosion. End of this misadventure, is it though? As the heroes gather at Sleaze's den to update each other about what has transpired, Scott-Free wonders if Darkseid helped him just to get rid of Sleaze and tie up an old loose end. Barda asks Superman why he tried to stop her from attacking Sleaze when he first arrived. He tells her he cannot tell her the reason, and she would have to trust him. Barda agrees to that, as all things seem to be settling down. Superman brings up the topic of what they did under Sleaze's influence, as Mr. Miracle watches on in the background sulkily. They both decide not to recall the events that transpired and move on with their lives as they bid farewell to each other. We next see Clark Kent back in the same hospital, following up on his investigation. He has come to the conclusion that Sleaze fed on the deepest and darkest of human emotion, and what he released as excess was converted to pure life energy, which somehow sustained these people who by all means should not be alive. Now, with Sleaze gone, it would probably mean the end for these folks as well. We are, however, left on a cliffhanger, as the radiation that was present in their body is still very much there and hasn't disappeared, and the fact that they continue to live might mean that our slimy antagonist might well have lived to fight another day. Marvelous verdict. People suspect the comic to be a retaliation by Jack Byrne for Kirby lampooning him as the character Booster Cogburn, who is spineless, has no genital, and has no purpose in life other than to serve as a cog in the system. The authors had their differences as they stood in opposite camps regarding writers' rights to character and free and fair compensation during the 80s. What makes this very uncomfortable is that Barda's character is widely accepted as being Jack Kirby's wife. We think Jack Byrne may have gone a bit too far with it. All of this is speculation at the end of the day, but like they say, there is no smoke without fire. The 80s were a crazy era, and this comic is also a product of its time. To conclude, we would recommend reading this comic book. It is a unique comic, the likes of which we won't likely read again. At the end, the Man of Steel avoided an undesirable reason to add to why he was given that name, stepping away from the controversy. It certainly makes for an interesting read, as it puts some of our most beloved characters in such an extraordinary situation, even for their own lofty superhuman standards. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.